Hey everybody, welcome aboard. I did some work to my float checklist that I use, and I basically use this when I have new individuals in the flight deck that really don't know anything about the 737. And this float checklist that I created allows me to take the aircraft from cold and dark to securing the aircraft on the back end based on this one sheet, front and back. And I've made some changes to this, so I'm going to run through each one of the sections, and we'll start with the Originator flight. So we're going to begin with the Originator flight, and as you can see on the list, we should have our dispatch or load sheet, which we would have if we were actually running a flight. With that, up next is a DC voltmeter selected to bat. DC battery switch on guarded. Fuel pump switches are off. Wipers left and right are set to park. Electric hydraulics 1 and 2 are set to off. Landing gear lever is down, and we have a 3 green. Weather radar to test. Master caution reset. Fault in op test. Fire warning. Ground power is available, so we're going to go on ground power. Confirm that we have ground power on the AC side of the electrical panel. Going to move that to ground power. We're going to set our bleed panel for unconditioned air. Our packs are going to be set to auto, and the isolation valve is going to be set to open. Back at the electrical panel, I'm going to take the galley power and turn that on. Going to come up to the IRS selectors, move them over to a line, wait for the on DC to extinguish, and move them to nav. Emergency exit lights are going to be on. Our AC panel, I'm just going to recirculate the trim air switch. We're going to enter our position into the CDU. We're going to confirm that our flaps are up and matches the indicator. We're going to set our parking brake. And we're going to set exterior lights. Since it's nighttime, we're going to turn our logo light on, and we're going to turn our position lights on to steady. And that takes care of the Originator flight. And now we're going to begin our pre-flight. Leading edge device flaps test. Service interphone is off. Our engine reverses are extinguished. Our EEC switches are on guarded. Crew oxygen is at about 13,000, which is fine. Passenger oxygen is normal guarded. Our flight recorder we're going to test. Our Mach speed 1 and 2 we're going to test, as well as our stall warning 1 and 2. We should have 3 green on the landing gear as far as the indicators are concerned, and the PSEU light should be extinguished. We're now going to test the oxygen flow. This would be done on the first officer side as well. Now that we've checked the oxygen flow, we're going to test the lights. Make sure we don't have any burnt out bulbs. And the lights test looks good. We're going to continue our pre-flight with the forward overhead. Flight controls A and B are on guarded. Alternate flaps are off guarded. Spoilers A and B are on guarded. Yaw damper is on. That should extinguish. Our navigational radios are set for normal. VHF, NAV, IRS, and FMC. Our display source is set to auto and control panel set to normal. Crossfeed check. Crossfeed is good. AC/DC panel is good. Equipment cooling is set to normal. No smoking and fasten seatbelt signs are on. Window heat power test is good. And let's do a window overheat test. We're going to let that run. Probe heat switches are off. TAT test. This temp probe indicator should extinguish, but I do not believe Zeebo has it modeled though. Our wing and our engine anti-ice are off. Our electric 1 and 2 hydraulic pumps are off. If this was an actual flight, these doors would be open. We're going to press test on the cockpit voice recorder and check that. We're going to check our pressurization panel and our cabin climb. Make sure we don't have any erroneous numbers in here. We're sitting at the airport at a gate with the doors open, so, well, we would be at the doors open, so we shouldn't have any erroneous numbers in there. Our AC panel is fine. The temperature back there is comfortable. Our bleed air panel, our recirc fans are set to auto. We're going to do a wing body overheat. Reset the master caution. That's good. Left and right packs are set to auto. Isolation valve is set to open. And engine bleeds are set to on. APU is set to off. That's because we're using unconditioned air. If I was using the APU for power and air, APU switch would be on and the isolation valve would be set to auto. And let's say this flight is set up for flight level 220. This would be set for 22,000 feet, which it is. Our landing altitude, I would put the altitude here at Jackson, just in case we had to come back. I wouldn't have to go and set that up. We're going to check a manual valve. We'll go to alternate, over to manual. We'll open it, close it, and set it back up to auto. Our lights, we're going to get the lights set up the way we want them. Our logo and our position lights are on. It's nighttime. And our engine start selector switch is set to right for the first flight of the day, and that takes care of the forward overhead panel. So with the forward overhead done, now we're going to move on to ATIS, clearance, and programming the flight management computer. I've got the VHF radio tuned into ATIS, and I'm sitting at Jacksonville
INTL
so that's going to pop
information
up.
uniform. 200 Zulu weather. Wind calm. Visibility more than 10. Sky conditions 20,000 scattered, 35,000 scattered, temperature 14, dew point -15. Altimeter 2992. Arriving runways 0814, departing runways 0814. Advise on initial contact you have uniform.
So we have uniform. So now we would move on to getting clearance. If I was flying online, I would file the flight plan, and then I would get clearance for that flight plan. And then that's what we would do now. Now we would tune in clearance, and we would get clearance. Now once that's done, we would move on to programming the flight management computer for whatever flight we're running. Now for those of you that want to see how to program the flight management computer, I set up a video not that long ago, and I've included a link down below, so if you want to see how I run my flights, you can actually go and take a look at that. So with the flight management computer programmed, we would move on to the pedestal. So now the CDU is programmed, we're going to move on down to our VHF and our nav radios, and we want to set them up for departure. And what I'll do is, being that we're done with clearance, I would tune in whatever the ground frequency was, and I would put that, transfer it over to the active, and then put the tower frequency in standby frequency. This way they're set up, ready to go. What I do down here on my nav radios is whatever the arrival runway is at, in this particular case would be Jacksonville, I would put that in. So if I had to come back to Jacksonville, if I had a problem with the aircraft, my nav radios are already set up, as well as the land altitude on the pressurization panel. So at this point, with the radio set for departure, we're going to move on up to our EFIS and mode control panel. Now we're going to start with the EFIS panel, and when we tuned in ATIS, they told us that the altimeter was 29.92, so we would set 29.92, and then we would set these preferences as how I want them. And on the captain's side, I usually set up terrain, position, data, airport, and station. On the first officer's side, he'll have weather, station, airport, data, and position. Flight director, I'm going to make sure that the captain is on the master and turn on the first officer's flight director. Our IAS Mach speed is going to be what we received from the flight management computer. Let's say it's 137 for takeoff. Our initial heading that we're cleared, as well as altitude. Let's say we're cleared to 7,000. We'll set that to 7,000. And we can press the VNAV button. Now that would light up if I actually programmed the flight management computer. And again, if you want to see how to set up the flight management computer, you can just take a look down at the link that's down on the YouTube, down there on the information, and you'll be able to see how I set up my flights. So that basically takes care of the EFIS and the MCP panel. And at that point, we're going to move on down to the main instrument panel. Now on the main instrument panel, we want to set the clock. We want to make sure that the nose wheel steering is set to norm, it's guarded. We want to check our main panel and lower panel DUs. In case one of these monitors burn out, we want to be able to move them to a different location, as well as our lower displays. Our auto flight annunciators, we want to check those. We're going to take a look at our primary flight display. We want to make sure that 45 is shown on the speed tape, that our V1 speed is shown in the upper left-hand corner. On the upper right-hand corner of the display, we have our initial cleared altitude, and we want to make sure that the headings match. On the nav display, we want to make sure that we have terrain selected. We want to set up our standby gauges. We want to make sure that the artificial horizon is level, that the local pressure is in, that the flags are set. And we're going to set up the RMI, our N1 set, and our speed reference. These are going to be set to auto. We're going to reset our fuel flow. We're going to set our auto brake to rejected takeoff. And we want to check and confirm that the oil quantity, our hydraulic fluid, and fuel is sufficient for the flight. At that point, we're basically done with the MIP, and we're going to move on down to the throttle quad. We want to confirm that the speed brake is down. We want to make sure that the reverses are down, that the throttles are at idle, and that the flaps are up. We're going to test the takeoff config for each throttle to make sure that the parking brake is set, that the fuel levers are at cutoff. We're going to test the stabilizer trim. Let that run amok, and it stops it. And then we'll put the stab trim back to where it should be. At that point, we're going to check our squibs. We're going to check the bottles. We're going to do a cargo fire test. Our radios are already set. We're at TA, standby. Our weather radar is on test. And we're going to test our TCAS. And as you can see, that test is being conducted. There's no audio because I have it turned off so you can hear me a little bit better. And that test is complete. We want to make sure that the rudder and aileron trim is centered. Our stab trim is guarded normal, and we're going to conduct a ground proximity warning test. Once this test is finished, that concludes the pre-flight. Before pushback. So now we should have our zero fuel weight set, our N1s, right, our reduced set, our max set, our V speeds, our V1, our VR, V2 should be set, our stabilizer trim should be set, and we're ready to start the APU and get away from the gate. So we don't have any fuel in the center tank, so we're going to bring up our pumps, and we're going to bring up our APU. So now that the APU is up and running, we're going to come off of ground power and go on APU power. What we can also do is we'll reset these. The window heat was concluded from earlier. I just reset those switches. Now after a minute we would wait, and then we would go on APU bleed air. So let's just say we waited a minute and we're on APU bleed air. At this point we want to confirm that we're set for gate departure, right? That the doors are closed and locked up, external equipment is disconnected, and that the chocks have been removed. And then we're going to call for pushback. Now we've called for push and start, and they're all hooked up and we're lifted up. We just have to release the brake and we're on our way. So we're going to note the pushback time.
Already pushback, and you may start engines.
Okay, so we're going to take our pack switches and turn them off. Confirm that we have sufficient pressure for start. We're going to take our anti-collision light and turn that on. And we're going to start number 2. We're going to bring that on over the ground. We're waiting for max motoring. Low oil pressure indicator will extinguish on number 2, and then we'll introduce fuel. And starting number 1, move the start selector over the ground. Going to wait for max motoring and low oil pressure indicator to extinguish on engine 1, and then we'll introduce fuel again.
Operation complete. Set parking brake. Disconnecting tow. Stand by.
So the engine start is complete, and we've been pushed back. We're now up to before taxi checklist once we get disconnected. So we've now been disconnected from tow, and we're just getting ready to taxi. So we're going to perform our before taxi flow check. So our fuel control levers are locked at idle detent. Our engine generators we're going to turn on. And we're going to test the engine generator 2, and we're going to leave it on engine generator 1. Our probe heat switches are coming off. Wing anti-ice we don't need. Hydraulic pump switches, electric 1 and 2 are coming on. Bleed air panel check set. So we're going to take our packs, put them back to auto, and we're going to take our APU and turn that off. Exterior lights as needed. We're going to take our taxi light and turn that on. APU is needed. We don't need the APU anymore, so we're going to turn the APU off. Master caution recall, and we've got a clean board. Now we want to check out oil quantity, engine oil quantity, and we are good. Our flaps are going to be set for takeoff, which is flaps 5. Our weather radar is going to auto. And we're going to check our flight controls. And our flight controls are free and clear. So now the last thing we want to do before we start taxiing out is we're going to make sure that our TCAS is set to TA and we're going to come off standby to auto. I made a couple of changes in the flow, so it'll be corrected in the download version that is available in YouTube. But I just changed the one that I'm using. A couple of minor changes, nothing big. So now we're all set and we're going to taxi on out to the active. So we're sitting at the active runway and we just got clearance to get out of here. So we're going to continue with our before takeoff check flow. So I'm going to let the attendants know our exterior lights are coming on. Engine start selectors to continuous. Auto throttle is armed. Transponder to TARA and auto. And we're going to release the parking brake and get set.
Approaching 26. On runway 26.
And we're going to advance the throttles to 40%. Let them stabilize. We're going to press the toga button, advance the throttles to full. Going to confirm that the thrust is set and that the airspeed is active.
80 knots.
Check. Throttle hold.
V1 rotate. Positive rate.
Gear up.
$1,000.
And now we're going to retract the flaps. So now we're coming up on 10,000 feet, and we're going to activate the autopilot and VNav. Flight attendants are going to be notified. Cabin pressurization and temp. We want to make sure that.
Ladies and gentlemen, the fasten seatbelt sign is on. Please remain seated. When the captain turns the sign off, you'll be able to move about the cabin. When you are in your seat, please keep
It is a little loud, that announcement. I'm going to have to work on that.
Turbulence. Please be careful when opening the overhead compartment. We ask that you use the lavatories located in your cabin, and please don't stand near the lavatories in the galleys. You may now use all of your personal electronic devices. For everyone's
So at
safety,
10,000
please
feet,
ensure your personal belongings
we're going to check
are
the
clear
cabin
of the office.
pressurization panel. All right, we're going to check the engine bleeds. Going to check and make sure that our flight altitude is set for 22,000 feet. Our pack switches are set. Our APU is off. Exterior lights is needed. Our landing lights, runway turn-off lights are going to come off. Logo lights off, wing lights off. Our engine start selectors are coming off. Our auto brake select is coming off. And our landing gear is coming off.
And the United app free of charge, where you can check flight status and more. To use other
That's
apps
one long
and
message,
websites,
huh?
You can purchase an internet access plan. We will be serving a variety of complimentary drinks, wines, craft beer, and other alcoholic beverages for purchase. In United Economy, a variety of snack boxes and refreshments are available to purchase, as well as freshly prepared meals from our bistro onboard menu. You can find more details about the menu in the back of Hemispheres magazine or the seatback guide. We accept most major debit and credit cards, including those with a Visa, MasterCard, Discover, or American Express logo, as well as the Mileage Plus Explorer Visa card. We now invite you to sit back, relax, and enjoy the service on today's flight. Let us know if there's anything we can do to make your flight more comfortable.
So now we're coming up on 18,000 feet, and we're going to go to standard pressure. So now we're just about at cruise, which is 22,000 feet. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn off the no smoking and seatbelt sign. And we're going to monitor basically all the systems that you see there on the flow checklist. And we're going to plan our arrival.
Thousand to go.
I'll catch you on the way down. Now we started our descent into Jacksonville, and at 18,000 feet, we're going to make sure that our bleed air packs are set to auto, which they are. Our pressurization panel, we want to put in our land altitude, which it is. Our passenger signs are on. Our auto brake selector is going to be set.
The seatbelt sign has been switched on. There is safety, please remain
Flight instruments and radios. So if we take a look here, we're looking at 110.3. 110.3. We're looking at 257. And our landing speed, flaps 30 is $125. So our flight instruments and radios are set. Altimeter is going to be set to local pressure, which it just so happens to be 2992 anyway. So that is set. Recall, we've got a clean board. and our landing data, our VREF and minimums, and we've got that. Up next, 10,000 feet. So we're coming up on 10,000 feet, so we're going to put our exterior lights on. Our engine start selector switches are going to continuous, and our EFIS panel is already set up for terrain. So that's it until final approach. Okay, flight attendants notified. Speed brake is armed. Landing gear is down 3 green, and flaps are set for landing.
Approaching 26.
Approaching decision height. $200 minimums. $100. 50, 40, 30, 20, 10.
We'll be taxiing for the next few minutes, so please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened and all items stowed until the seatbelt sign is turned off. Please make sure you have all your personal belongings before you exit the aircraft, and be careful when opening the overhead compartments. You're now free to use your mobile phones and small lightweight devices. Thank you for flying with us today. We hope you've had a pleasant experience, and we look forward to welcoming you again on another flight.
Now we've just landed in Jacksonville. I'm going to set up our lights. I'm going to get the APU on. Okay, your damper off, window heat is off, probe heat switches are off, engine wing anti-ice as needed, engine start selectors to off. Auto brake is off. Speed brake is down. Flaps are up. Transponder to TA. Weather radar to test. Now we're going to come on APU power. Definitely got to swap out that switch. Now we're going to come on APU bleed air. Here's our gate. Taxi light is off. Okay. Parking brake is set. Transponder to standby. Electrical power, APU or ground. We're on APU power. And bleed air, we are on APU bleed air. Fuel cutoff levers to cut off. Any collision light is off. Passenger signs. Passenger signs are off. Fuel pumps are off. Electrical panel. Galley power is off. Window heat switches are off. Hydraulic, electric 1 and 2 are off. Exterior lights as needed. We have the logo and position lights on. Flight directives are off. And ground services. Chocks are set. Parking brake is off. So now it's time to secure the aircraft on the back end. So the IRS selectors are going to off. Emergency exit lights are off unguarded. Exterior lights are coming off. Bleed air panel. Auto open. Engine APUs are back on and the APU bleed is off. Engine start selected to both. APU or ground power off or disconnect. We are on APU, so we're going to turn that off. DC-AC select is to standby. And battery switch to off. And that's a wrap. I'll catch you on the next run. And for those of you that want this flow checklist, a link is down in the bottom. And for those that want to know how I set up my flight and run my CDU for the flight management computer, that link is also down there as well. All right, I'll catch you on the next run.